Welcome, everyone, to our 5th episode of What Does God Say About? And today I've got 2 special guests with me. I've got our youth pastor, Sarah Nichols, and our children's director, Julie Stevens. And we're going to be talking about what does God say about technology. And so that is kind of funny, right? Because the Bible doesn't actually talk about technology at all, but there's a lot in the Bible that we can glean from to be able to see maybe what God thinks about technology in today's world. So welcome, guys. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
So I want to know, will you guys just share a little bit about what technology use looked like in your families growing up, and then a little bit about kind of what that looks like in your families now?
Wow. I am older than both of these ladies here, but I think only by a little bit.
Not
but
by much.
Anyway, we did not have a computer in my house growing up. We had television and a phone on the wall. But I had access to the dial-up internet in the school library, and I remember my friends being in chat rooms. Remember what those were?
AOL.
Yeah.
I had a computer in our home. I had a Game Boy, the old school gray one, and a TV. I had a TV in my room, my own TV, so that was a big deal. And didn't have a lot of limits on anything. I remember going to those chat rooms and being very like, wow, what's going on? So, and didn't have a lot of guidance in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a computer that had like one game on it when I was a kid, and floppy disks that were literally like 6 inches by 6 inches. And we had a TV, but we didn't have cable. But I would say growing up, we watched a lot of TV. That was like it was like what we did in the afternoons after school. Let's watch TV.
Yeah.
And then we got a computer with AOL maybe when I was in 6th grade.
AOL.
Yeah. So like I said earlier, technology is not specifically mentioned in the Bible. So we don't know exactly what God says about computers, but or cell phones or video gaming systems or whatever. But there's a verse in Philippians 4:8 that says, "Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things." And so that to me is like the standard that I think we should use when we compare like our technology use to that. And so I wondered what you guys thought were some of the excellent things about technology, because there's a lot of good that comes with it.
Do you want to go first?
You go ahead, Julie.
Well, I just know from my family, one of the ways we connect a lot is we love family movie night. So definitely our technology use is watching movies together. So we do that every Friday. We get popcorn and the candy, and that's one of the ways we connect. So we definitely do that. I know that Jaden is, he's age 9, getting into video games, which I know nothing about. Video games have changed since Tetris. So
Dr. Mario.
Yes. I mean, they're still Mario Brothers, but it's not the Mario Brothers we grew up with. Right. So he's learning. Actually, he was reading a book this morning about how to learn how to be a video gamer, like, and get a job, and how does that market work. And I was like, what is happening?
It's a thing. Yeah.
It's a thing. So he is wanting to learn about that and that market and learning how to compete in such things. Kids can get scholarships for that, and that's just like, I don't know anything about it. So trying to use video games in a competing sense and a learning sense, and not just I'm going to sit here all day and play it sense. But we love our Mac computers and use them. Jesse uses our budgets and everything in there, so we're always putting things into spreadsheets and doing data like that. So
you're speaking my love
I
language.
know.
I love data.
You should have seen when we bought our car. He had a whole spreadsheet for which car and, you know, all the things. So we definitely use technology a lot.
Yeah. I mean, our family having older children with a lot of stuff going on, it's really nice to be able to coordinate calendars. I love that about technology and the constant access, communicating with my now college kid. I love it that I can FaceTime him.
Yeah.
And I can see his handsome face down there in Phoenix.
Yay.
And, have access to him every day through a text message without being annoying. Sorry, Joe. But yeah, I just love how communication just is at our fingertips with the people that we love.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that too. My kids, we homeschool, and so they do obviously a ton on devices, but some of my favorite things that they do is create on their devices. And so they'll write a story and illustrate it on the iPad.
Awesome.
And so it's just really fun. It gives them another way besides just drawing with their hands and pencils to be able to do it digitally. And so that's really fun. And like I said, I love spreadsheets, so all the organization can happen on the computer. I'm like,
Yep.
I'm like Jesse, I want to be like, have the budget on there. We run our own business. QuickBooks is amazing. And there's just so much that we can do with technology that is really helpful and makes life a lot easier.
It really does.
For sure.
Yeah. All right. So then those are some of the excellent things about technology. What about things that maybe don't line up with the Bible's description of things being excellent and praiseworthy?
Well, I think that the level of consuming is always a concern, especially when your children get their own phone.
Yes.
It can be in their face for hours on end, and that is idolatry. That is, I'm thinking of sloth. That's not the word. What is it? Idol.
Being idle.
Being idle.
Being idle.
Idolatry. That's why.
That's
it was
different.
too similar of a word.
Yes. But I know what you mean.
Yeah. Yeah. Being too idle.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, obviously the bad things can be, I'm just going to say it, pornography. We live in a world where when we grew up, I feel like that wasn't something that was as in our faces as our kids now. But I've shared this before, and Jaden has said it's fine for me to share, but he has been exposed to pornography from seeing it from another kid's phone. So just knowing that other kids who have phones or have devices are accessing that our kids are going to be able to see that or be exposed to that. So that is another realm of obviously not good. So just trying to teach them what to do with that and how to react to that and all that stuff. So that's one of the bad spaces that it goes to.
Yeah, and I try not to scare parents, but I often say, it's not a matter of if your child will be exposed, but when.
Right.
And God can do anything. He can protect our kids from anything.
Oh, agreed.
But it is more than likely that your kid will be exposed to it at some point.
Right.
Yeah, and the average age that kids are exposed to pornography now is between 8 and 11.
Right.
And so that is definitely something that if you don't know that information, you need to know and be aware of that. And we want to highlight that and bring awareness to that so that we can have good conversations and have good follow-up and set good boundaries to be able to help our kids.
Yes, on that, I was super thankful that we have set good boundaries and we're pretty open in our house about things like that he felt he was safe enough to tell me about what happened. So then those conversations happened, and it wasn't kept, and it wasn't shameful, and it wasn't a thing that we're going to be dealing with years later. We dealt with it, and we've worked on it, and I can share this later about resources to help with that. But just having those open boundaries with your kids about what they see on TikTok or Snapchat or whatever those social media things are.
Yeah. Constant conversation is key.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know. I think social media brings in a whole nother realm of things that that kids can be exposed to that they may not just see, like playing a game online or looking up YouTube videos or whatever. So my kids are not on social media. They're almost 13 and almost 9, but you have teenage kids. So how have you guys handled social media, and what are some of the things that parents can look out for with social media?
Well, when your child gets a phone, it's not a definite that social media needs to happen at the same time.
That's good.
There are certain apps that we have not allowed the boys to have until they're a certain age. And I think that is really key to what they're exposed to.
Yeah.
There's apps that have zero accountability. I actually do call Snapchat snap crap. It's one to be very, very cautious with because there's zero accountability in that app. So that is one that we have limited to the age of 17. Even though, and this is the hard part, your child will say,
everyone
all
has
of my
it.
friends communicate through Snapchat, and I don't hear about things because of that. But you have to be willing to, just raise your standard in your family to a different level and not be your kid's friend. Yep. They're not going to like it if you limit them. But I think that, checking out what they could be exposed to with certain apps and limiting those to certain ages or even maturities. Like when you see certain maturities in your child, then okay, this is a good time for you to now learn how to manage this in your own life.
Yeah, and I think that is important because obviously, and we're going to talk about setting boundaries here in a minute, but that has to change with ages because when your kid is 8, you should know all their passwords. And when they're 18, you shouldn't know any of them. Mm-hmm. And it's not just going to flip the switch at some point in time. We have to find a way to gradually let them go and guide them.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is the most beautiful reward, having an adult child now, realizing that he was capable of guiding himself. I'll share this story about him because it's just so beautiful. And it was such a good God moment for me as the mother of a teenage boy. When we went to Mexico last summer for a mission trip, I had asked him to speak at Campfire. And I thought he would probably talk about our mission trip to Togo and how that trip went. And I really didn't give him a lot of guidelines. I just said, you're one of the only students that has gone on this trip before. So I think your peers would love to hear from you. And we're trying to, give that job away to more teenagers than adults. And so he agreed to speak at Campfire. And when he got up, he started to talk about how he struggled with his phone and some things that he was exposed to on his phone and that he was seeking out on his phone in regards to purity of his eyes. Yeah. And he said that he had pursued an accountability partner because he was struggling. And I remember sitting there listening to my son say this, and immediately the enemy attacked me with guilt because I was like, what? You've gone through this and I knew nothing about it. Right. And I was just so sad that I wasn't there for him when he walked through that time. But then God came through and showed me, before he was even done speaking, Sarah, that was the goal. That was the goal, was that he was struggling with sin. He sought out repentance and then even sought out accountability to overcome sin in his life. Yeah. And that was the moment that I realized my son is a man and he's ready. He's ready to be in the world. And so I just want to encourage you all to pray constantly for your children, that they will have the ability to navigate this world and be the light and carry the light and deal with sin in their life in an adult way. It's so good.
That's awesome. That's amazing. Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it was a really special moment.
That's awesome.
I'm so proud of him.
I know that in our house, I think we, being young teens when technology really started to be a part of the everyday home, that and young adults when smartphones came out, I think it was easy, I know for me, and I think maybe for you guys too, that it kind of takes you by surprise how easy it is to become addicted to it, to feel like you need your phone within arm's reach at all time, to know about all the likes or all the notifications, or you can't miss an email or can't miss a call or a text or whatever. But I know for us as parents, we had to sit down as our kids grew through preschool age and into elementary age, that they were watching how we interacted with technology and then they copied it. Yeah. And so we had to take a really strong look at how we utilized technology. And I bet that if any of you pulled out your phones right now and looked at your screen time, that you would probably be surprised by how much you're on your device.
How long did it take you to solve that Wordle today?
Not on Wordle, don't know. But I will say that too. We, during COVID, realized that we relied on screens a lot too, just because we enjoy watching shows and we'll get hooked into a series. And so we started doing no screens on Sundays during COVID, and then kind of have tweaked it a little bit here and there, but we don't do screens during the week. And I know my kids see screens at school because of school things, but we just don't do it for entertainment purposes. So when they get home, it's books or Legos or playing outside, and they've adjusted really well. People are like, well, how do you do that? How do you not do screens? Well, you model it. And so we don't do either. We read books, and we just spend more time doing other things, playing games. I'm learning how to play games. So we just do those things. And then the weekends, they get a little bit more time than they probably would on a normal day. But then we're trying to do that together and to connect. I think that's a huge thing here. Is it's hard to set boundaries sometimes, but if you're connecting over that and learning good things out of it and not just consuming scroll and then getting to the comparison and then getting to lust or whatever you're getting to. And that's where we need to reevaluate. So.
Yeah. And I think one of the things, like talking about boundaries and thinking about that, is that the earlier you can start those boundaries, the better. So if you've got a toddler and you're like, we don't really need to worry about that yet, you need to worry about that right now.
You do.
Because it's a lot harder to turn that ship around and put those boundaries in place later on. But if you do have an older kid, like, don't think that the ship has sailed and you can't kind of take some of that back. Just have to be real careful about how you do it so that you don't create disconnection, because the goal in all of this is to maintain connection with our kids.
Agreed.
So that we're not talking about hiding and sneaking and lying and all of that can easily go along with technology use or anything that kids do. I know I remember being pregnant with Deacon and having like a 3-year-old daughter, and like Netflix was my best friend because I was so sick. I could hardly get up off the couch, and like she could watch something. And I totally 100% used it as a babysitter. Have you guys experienced that?
Oh, totally did that.
Oh, yeah. Jaden was raised on the iPad.
Yeah, I had the sound of Cars memorized because I could do all the things while the boys watched Cars, and they watched it over and over. So, yeah, even to this day, I can quote Cars.
Yeah.
I love it. Totally.
Yeah, I don't. So there's no shame,
no
guilt,
no,
nothing
we've all
that
been
you
there.
have ever done that, or like tried to have an adult conversation and given your kid, the phone. But I know for us, we just started noticing that the kids, like, that was what they thought they needed. There was this sense of like entitlement that came along with it. And we just started to see some attitude issues that weren't in line with our family culture or our family values. And so we changed up a lot of our boundaries and said, okay, you get 30 minutes of screen time a day that's not for a productive use. That's just for a consuming, kind of use or whatever, playing a game. So what are some of the boundaries that you guys have learned through trial and error have been good ones?
Well, when the boys were young, I wouldn't say that it was as accessible as it is now. I didn't have a smartphone. I'm glad I didn't, because it would be really tempting to just hand it to them.
Right.
But I would encourage parents to think about how important it is to teach your kid to be still. Like, that's a high level skill, I know, for a 2-year-old, but even if they're still in motion, they can learn to be still and find things to look at or entertain themselves while they're waiting. And it's so good for a kid to learn how to wait and be patient and quiet without a device in their face. So that's something that I would encourage parents to really think about is, does your kid know how to sit and wait and be patient?
Bored?
Yes.
Yeah, because that's where creativity is like, creativity only comes out when it's needed.
Right.
And so like just letting them be bored and finding something to do on their own that's creative.
Agreed.
Yeah.
We do have Kindles and iPads and all of that stuff, and Jaden is on Facebook Messenger, so sometimes if he gets to talk with a friend or call his aunt, the iPad stays in the living room. Devices don't wander because you just
So
never
good.
know what they can pull up. And he's 9, so he's not 18. So that obviously those boundaries may change. But for right now, if you're on the computer looking something up, or you're looking, like he likes to look for books on Amazon, you are sitting right next to me, because things
good.
can happen so quickly. And another conversation that is helpful is you might want to talk to grandparents, aunts, uncles, because what I had to have a conversation with my mom is about, she would just hand her phone over. Being like, oh, they're just playing a game. And I'm like, yes, they are just playing a game. However, there's ads that pop up and things. So we just don't even do that anymore. So just having those conversations with other people that your kids are around, like, hey, they just can't have free reign over here with this. There has to be, like, you can watch that movie with your aunt. You can play that game with your grandma. You know, just have those conversations. So we try to set boundaries with that.
Yeah, I had a friend who has older teenagers who told me several years ago, as we were in the process of building our house, that like she wished that she had made a rule early that devices didn't go into bedrooms. And so we built a 2-story house, and so we just set the rule the day that we moved in of our devices don't go upstairs without a certain circumstance, you know, certain things surrounding that. So our kids, again, at almost 13 and almost 9, like they do not have devices in their bedrooms. They're not alone with them. And they don't even take them upstairs. And if we have friends over, those friends follow the same
That's
rules.
good.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And like you said, that will have to shift to some degree as they become adults and show responsibility.
Right.
But generally that helps protect their eyes.
Yep.
So we have we have a Bark router at our house. And you can buy that online for less than $100. And so it actually allows you to go in and filter through what is allowed on each device in your home. It takes a little bit of tech savviness to figure it out, but they've got good help videos and stuff, but it keeps inappropriate content down. And you can, if you don't want any weapons to show up on stuff, you can do that. My husband is a hunter, and so he was very upset when that setting was
Can't even look up my hunting weapons.
Downside to that is that it's only Wi-Fi. It's only on your home Wi-Fi. So if somebody has a device that is, like through their cell phone, then they can still access whatever. But if you have friends over and they bring a device, if they connect to your Wi-Fi, it will block that content and send you, warnings. Bark has an app too when your kids are older and on social media and texting and emailing and all of that, where they'll actually look at all of that content, and they will notify you if they see words that relate to bullying or pornography or suicide and things like that, so that you can kind of keep an eye on.
And I think even more than words, like emojis, I mean, they are very about figuring out and decoding kids. It's not just the actual words, because kids are sneaky.
They know how to go around.
They know how to go around that. So
that does require a monthly subscription, but it's definitely would be a nice thing to have as a parent if you wanted to know kind of what more detailed your kids were looking through.
Right.
We use Circle in our house, and it's very similar. It's a router, and it will actually limit. It will shut their internet access off at a certain time. So you can set that limit. You can tell it you don't want it to allow certain apps through, or even content, which is really good. And it actually does monitor them when they're away from home too. So it can't necessarily block it, but it will monitor it, and you can see by going on the app as a parent what they've been doing. So it's actually a really, really good one. It's put out by Disney. They do good things too sometimes.
Good job, Disney.
But yes, that's the one we've always used in our house.
I know we have mostly Apple devices at our house, and Apple actually does a really good job of allowing you as a parent to set screen time stuff for your kids. So there's a whole slew of things that you can go all the way from, like, we can only do certain websites to limiting adult websites. And so I would say that at our house, we've got like multiple layers of protection.
That's good.
And that can be super annoying. Like my kids cannot put an app on their device without asking me. And it stinks if I'm in the middle of something and they need help.
Right.
But you just stop what you're doing, and you know that it's important to be able to not just have them have full access to stuff. I know Amazon has good screen time limits and that kind of stuff. Google has some. It's not as advanced, I think, as what Apple and Amazon have put out. For screen time, there's a product called ARO that actually measures, it's a box that you put your devices in, and it measures how much time you spend away from your phone and like challenges you to be off of your phone instead of measuring how much you're on it. So that's
competitive. You could have some competitive things in your house. I can see that getting a little crazy.
Yes.
I haven't used my phone for 14 days. Sarah's, I'm
Never
winning.
mind that I need it for work.
right.
She doesn't work here.
Well, and that's what, John Acuff.
But I'm winning.
But you're winning.
John Acuff said he started a competition with his kids. At the end of the week, they would see who had the least screen time, and that kid would win, or adult, whoever it was. They were competing against dad, and he uses it for work, and he still tried to beat his kids.
That's cool.
That's
every
amazing.
week. So I love that.
Well, there you go, Sarah.
Yep.
I didn't even know there was a way to compete at this.
Now you do.
Yeah, you're a competitor.
She is a fighter.
I love that. So good. Any other boundaries that you guys can think of that have been really helpful for your kids or for your family or yourselves even, because it's an adult thing too?
For myself, I will say that you can set on, I don't know about Android, but Apple, you can set how much for social media. Mm-hmm. So I have it set for a certain amount of time for Instagram, a certain amount of time for Facebook, because I can get drawn into that consuming mentality of just scroll. Right, and even though it's fun and sometimes there's Bible things and healthy things to look at, you can get sucked right in. So it like stops it and says you're done for the day, and there is a button you can push that says allow more. And I really try, and I showed Jaden the other day because he was like, you're always on Instagram, and I'm like, actually I'm not, because it'll tell me when I'm done for the day, and it will tell me I'm finished. Now, have I pushed it before to allow more time? Yes. However, I really try to stick to that to show my kids, because I think if we model that for them, like you have a limit, so do I. Yep. So I really do try to stick to that, and it does help me visually, like, oh, that's shaded. I used all my time this morning. It's done.
And I think that you're mentioning something here, Julie, that's key to keeping our kids, in accountability is the constant conversation.
Agreed.
And being vulnerable as an adult, like this is what I've struggled with, and then allowing them to come to you and talk. Yeah. And it has to be a constant conversation. Actually, Deuteronomy 6:5-7 is a great example of this. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. It says, impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. And I know that to be all the time. Yeah. And it's so important that our kids know that this is a constant conversation of what they've seen, what they want to know, what they're curious about. And I've always told my boys, I will tell you the truth about anything. Yeah. And you might not like your mom saying certain things, but I don't want you to Google it. I don't want you to ask your friends what that is or what it means. Right. So I'm just creating a safe environment for this constant conversation to be open, so there are no secrets here. Agreed. Yeah. And I'll let you know everything about me, and I want you to tell me everything about you.
Yeah. So good. Yeah. So good. I'm really looking forward to that even more as my kids get older and are teenagers, and it's more, not that I wouldn't talk to them about things beforehand, but just the more age appropriate it gets, I'm looking forward to being able to have those conversations with them. Right. So I'm sure you guys are wondering resources, right? Yeah. Like we are learning this ourselves, and there are some really good resources out there. So you want to say a couple of your favorites?
Sure. I'll start since they're sitting here. I talked about this weekend at church if you were here, but if you weren't, Good Pictures, Bad Pictures is one of our favorite things to talk to your kids about pornography. It this book is for older kids and actually uses the word pornography in it, and Good Pictures, Bad Pictures Junior. I believe it might say it in there one time. I haven't read it in a while. Janie's 6 now. But it starts at age 3. And I actually had someone contact me this weekend after our sermon and kind of just sharing our story. And they were like, we talk to our kids about sex and we talk about this and we're open, but we never ever thought about talking to them about pornography. And I was like, yeah, unfortunately, it, like you said, it's not if, it's when it's going to happen. And so keeping that accountability of this happened. And so this book is just really good about what happens when you see it, what do you do? And like Janie read this in the car the other day, and it just shows them like what happens when you see it. You run to a trusted adult, you tell them what you saw, and it just goes through that, and it just helps them know what a good picture is that we should be looking at and what we shouldn't be looking at. And just like with that verse, like thinking about what's true and what's pure. And so these have just been so good. I have passed them around to all of my friends. As uncomfortable as it may be, I've had to talk to my mom about this. Like, hey, we have to talk to our kids and your grandkids about this because it's prevalent in our day and age. We live in a different world than when we grew up.
Totally.
Yeah, you have to bring it into the light and remove shame.
Yep, definitely.
Or else it will be a secret that your kids want to keep from you. So,
agreed.
Yeah, it's so good. A book that I recommend is called A Guide to Culture. I believe that's what it's called. A Practical Guide to Culture. It's by John Stonestreet and Brett Kunkel. And it's actually not just about technology. It's actually a conversation about a lot of the things that teenagers are facing right now. And it actually has a book that goes with it called A Student's Guide to Culture. And so you can actually read the adult version and have your student read the student version.
That's
but
awesome.
it's got discussion questions in there too. It's just a really, really good book to start conversations about hard things that our kids are facing right now.
Would you say that is for teenagers?
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. High school age, probably. 8th grade, probably
That's
is
awesome.
youngest. I would recommend that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't want to steal the podcast from you, so do you want to talk about that one?
The Protect Young Eyes or
The Coffee Kids
Oh
and
yeah,
Crazy.
so Coffee Kids and Crazy is an awesome parenting podcast. They talk about all kinds of things, but they have a couple. I know one for sure episode about technology, and they talk about good pictures, bad pictures in it. It's just really good if you just get super hungry for information about technology and kids and how to handle that. And they talk about teenagers, and it's just a really good episode. The other thing is Protect Young Eyes is a website that you can go to that has lots of resources for how to keep our kids protected from being exposed to pornography and just other harmful things, and what to do to help them if they do come across that. Matt McKee, who's the founder, CEO maybe of Bark,
CEO.
he wrote a book called Parenting in a Tech World. So if you are a reader, that would be a good option. They've also got an e-course that you could do if you're more of like a watch the videos or do it in a small group kind of setting. I know that we have access through our curriculum here at Grace to a cell phone agreement.
I think it's on Parent Queue.
Yeah, it is on Parent Queue. So you can find a cell phone agreement on Parent Queue. Just looks at lots of different ways to like set up agreements with how your kids are going to use technology and expectations and stuff like that. So those are just some of the resources. I'm sure that we're barely scratching the surface with that. But we really enjoyed talking about this today. We've enjoyed sharing it with you, and just hope that if you guys have questions, leave a comment. Who knows, maybe we'll do a part 2 of this if you need more, or if you say like, I need to know more about what to do if my kid was exposed to pornography. Like, we're happy to talk more about that too. So, I hope you guys have a great evening, and thanks for joining us here.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.